From controversial tires to absurd scoring systems, F1 has had a bunch of terrible rule changes over the years, starting with the one that's bound to get many fans heated, the introduction of double points. The 2014 Formula One season witnessed an unusual regulation that was introduced to the final round of the championship. The governing body, FIA, decided that the last race of the season would be worth double points. This led to much controversy and criticism from fans and the motorsport community. This regulation meant that the drivers and teams had to adapt to a unique point system. Ultimately, the winner of the final race could gain 50 points instead of the usual 25. The system was designed to increase the chances of a dramatic finish to the season. Plus, the drivers who might have been trailing could catch up and have a shot at the championship. The 2014 championship was dominated by Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, who were Mercedes teammates. Hamilton had been leading the championship with a comfortable 17-point lead over Rosberg going into the final race. The introduction of double points helped German drivers in a certain way. It allowed the German driver to have a shot at the championship if he won the race and Hamilton finished below third place. What made this such an intense event? This was the first time the double points regulation was applied for the first time in Formula One history. It proved to be a controversial move as it went against the usual point scoring system in the sport. Many felt that it made the championship too unpredictable and that the winner could be decided more by chance than skill. But despite it all, the 2014 championship ended up being decided by the double point system, with Hamilton clinching the title by a considerable margin. Honestly, I can see how having double the points for the final race would definitely up the wow factor. But I guess should the lucky final racer be valued more over the one who's been a consistent winner? Who knows? But that's not the only rule changed and had people up in arms. Many were also disappointed at the dropped points scored. Formula One and other motorsports series used a point scoring system for many years. The system was based on the principle of dropping a driver's worst scores at the end of the season. This meant that drivers would accumulate points over the course of the season, but their final total would be determined by their best performances. While this system allowed drivers to recover from poor performances earlier in the season, it also had some drawbacks. For one, it made it difficult for drivers to keep track of their points and their position in the championship standings. Drivers would often have to rely on their team to calculate their points, and even then, the results could be uncertain. The debate about the best way to allocate points in motorsport is still something that goes on to this day. Some call for a more complex system that rewards consistency and not just race wins. While the reasons behind the system used for many years in Formula One and other motorsport series are unclear, with different theories proposed. Regardless of the system used, it's clear that the point system plays a crucial role in determining the outcome of the championship. I can definitely see fans and experts arguing over this for many years to come. That said, this next F1 rule change may be just as controversial, and it's grooved tires. In the mid-1990s, the FIA became increasingly concerned about the high speeds being reached by F1 cars. Rather than simply capping the speed limit, they instead looked for ways to reduce the mechanical grip of the cars. In 1998, they introduced a new tire design featuring large grooves, which reduced the contact area between the tire and the track surface, reducing mechanical grip. And you may imagine, the change was not without controversy. Some felt that the new tire design made the cars look silly, while others complained that the reduced grip made the cars more difficult to control. Despite these complaints, the groove tire design remained in use for over a decade until it was finally abandoned in 2009. But hey, the legacy of the groove tire era lives on though, and that's because the engineers became increasingly focused on aerodynamic grip. Since they attempted to compensate for the reduced mechanical grip of the tires, this led to the development of cars that were highly dependent on clean air. It made it difficult for them to follow each other closely and led to a decline in the quality of racing. Since the abandonment of the groove tire, F1 has continued to refine its approach to tire design. Modern F1 tires are designed to provide sufficient grip and durability while still allowing for exciting racing. They are also carefully engineered to work within the limits of the cars, helping to ensure that they are safe and reliable. Overall, the idea of the groove tire represented a significant moment in F1 history. While the design was ultimately abandoned, it helped to spur important developments in aerodynamics and tire design. These have shaped the sport in many ways. Today, F1 continues to evolve and adapt, and as a fan, it's great to see. The sport seems to be trying to balance safety, performance, and entertainment all at the same time. This isn't always the easiest thing to do, but hey, it's worth a shot. And the list of terrible rule changes doesn't just end there, because I've got to talk about the aggregate qualifying. For years, Formula One has been toying with its qualifying format to make the sport more exciting for fans. While the current knockout system has been working well, the sport has had its fair share of questionable changes, mostly made for change's sake. One of the most noteworthy changes happened in 2003 when one-shot qualifying was introduced. Each driver had only one lap to set their grid position. Although the change aimed to introduce an element of risk, it had little effect on the sport. And as if that wasn't enough, to shake things up further, Formula One implemented aggregate qualifying in 2005 where drivers would complete 2 runs. One on Saturday with low fuel qualifying trim and the other on Sunday with their race start fuel. The results of both runs were then combined to create the grid for the race. The format, however, failed to deliver any benefits to the sport as it created an uneventful Saturday session for new outlets. It also widened the gap between fast and slow cars. After only 6 races, the format was dropped, along with the one-shot qualifying at the end of the season. And finally, there's the granddaddy of all the worst F1 rules changes. Yep, it's the fuel credit qualifying. This one really had me furious. From 2003 to 2010, Formula One teams had to navigate the complex rules around qualifying. This included using the fuel from the first stint of the race during the most critical part of the season. This led to the third part of qualifying, which was introduced later and followed the knockout format, being slower than Q2. Not just that though. Since teams were hesitant to complete many laps in order to preserve fuel for the race, the sessions were less exciting and dynamic. This, in the end, caused concern among broadcasters and fans alike. To address this, the FIA introduced a fuel credit system, which allowed teams to receive some fuel back for each lap completed during the final part of qualifying. But this led to what is now known as the fuel burn phase. That's where cars would simply circulate the track at a reduced pace to maximize their fuel return. The system was ultimately dropped in 2008, thankfully so, and the race fuel qualifying section was eliminated altogether in 2010 when refueling was banned. Anyway, what are your thoughts on some of the worst F1 rule changes? See you in the next one!